What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. And that's right, it's time for the trade targets of the week. We wanted to get this video over to you guys a little bit quicker. That way you not only understand the players that we're buying low and selling high on this week, but so that way you can actually put out an offer and make a deal throughout the week. Before we do get into the video though, make sure you're following both Nick and I on Twitter. If you guys want to have some one-on-one time with us, you guys want to contact us, the best place to do that is on Twitter. If you have some last minute lineup advice that you need, if you're wondering our outlooks on a certain player, go ahead, tweet at us, DM us, whatever it takes. The platform to do it on is Twitter. And besides that, I just want to throw this question out over to you. Who is your top sell high candidate and buy low candidate of the week? So if you could only pick one, regardless of position, tell me the guy that you want to acquire at all costs and the guy that you are trying to get rid of as soon as possible. I know all of you are very opinionated and we want to hear who is on your list and who tops your list for this week. And while you're there, if you could please give this video a like, we would really appreciate it. We're going to continue to pump out good content for you guys all season long. So if you do enjoy what we are doing on this channel, just give the video a like. It helps us out a lot. But without further ado, let's get into the video. We're going to talk about the sell high candidates first. I'm going to start with a running back, and this pick is very polarizing. It's David Johnson of the Arizona Cardinals. And typically I do avoid selling high draft capital players early, especially if they're underperforming, because it could be seen as selling low, especially based on the draft day expectations that they had. But when it comes to David Johnson, I have some serious concerns, and it mostly stems from the coaching and the offense. The way that they're using DJ, it's just not conducive to fantasy success. In the last game, they put in Chase Edmonds when the game was on the line. What is this team doing? They did come out and say that it had something to do with a coaching issue on not picking up the blitz, but I don't care what the reason is. When the game's on the line, you put your best player on the field, and that best player is David Johnson. So the red flags, they're obviously there. Like I said, it's usually not smart to sell players while their value is still low, but he's RB20, and I mean, that's not super low. People know that there is a quarterback switch that's currently happening, has the opportunity to potentially improve this offense as a whole, which means there are buyers out there who are willing to fork up a pretty penny for the upside that comes with the name value of David Johnson. So what I'm saying is there's plenty of selling points and there are plenty of buyers out there that are willing to pay up. It's undeniable that DJ's value isn't super high, but believe me, if you put David Johnson on the trade block, there is a team out there that still believes that he has top 5 upside. Now, I personally believe that's an unrealistic expectation, and I also believe that if he did not catch that touchdown, owners would be in full panic mode and you would have no potential trade partner. So I think the time to act is now, and if it were up to me, I would be looking to target a low-end RB1, somebody who's been underperforming like Kareem Hunt, or I may even be willing to trade away some more of my depth and add in a player to obtain one of those top 5 type guys like a Melvin Gordon or Saquon Barkley. Next up on this list is Chris Carson, and all I have to say, 34 touches. That's exactly how many times the Seahawks gave the ball to Chris Carson, and with running backs, volume means everything. But does that mean we can confidently start him from this point forward? Definitely not. The Seattle team, it's an extremely weak offense, not to mention their offensive line is in shambles and they have a terrible defense. So all that adds up to a better passing game as opposed to a better run game. And when it came to the recent matchup against Dallas, they had a lead, which gave them a rare opportunity to have a run-heavy approach. I know this team is committed to establishing the run, but how many games can they be unsuccessful at it until they have to resort to Russell Wilson's arm? It's just bound to happen. They're going to have a difficult time trying to replicate what they just did in the matchup against Dallas. And the selling point with Chris Carson is going to come from the fact that he has taken over the lead back duties. A lead back is tough to get in the NFL, and with the RB injuries and busts that are just piling up this season, finding a trade partner for this running back is not going to be hard at all. Target one of those teams that lost any of these players that I'm about to list: McKinnon, Mixon, McCoy, Bell, Fournette, or Cook. What you could also do is look to target teams that have underperformers at the running back position who just need to add depth, teams that have Jordan Howard, maybe Lamar Miller. It's week 4, the buys are here. There are teams that are RB needy. That's an undeniable fact. Now, Carson isn't usually going to garner a 1-for-1 type trade value, or at least not for anything substantial, but if you are to trade a running back wide receiver combination, he is the type of player that can definitely tip the scales in your favor. Moving on to the wide receivers, this one should be an obvious one, similarly to Chris Hogan last week, and that's Marquise Goodwin of the San Francisco 49ers. It all comes down to Jimmy Garoppolo. He tore his ACL. That means that this team is going to be in rough shape when it comes to the passing game. More specifically, Marquise Goodwin himself, he's going to be the player that suffers the most in this entire offense because, let's face it, in order to get Goodwin the ball, his skill set, you need to have a good arm and you need to be willing to sling it down the field. Oftentimes, inexperienced quarterbacks, they tend to not look to do that very often because mistakes can be made in the passing game that way, and that is the quickest way to lose your job even as a backup. But as for Goodwin's current value, he did reach the end zone this week. I know he was banged up in the first couple weeks, but don't forget, we're only a few weeks outside of the draft and people still hold on to a lot of the draft day price tag value. Some people can see Marquise Goodwin and they see him as one of those middle round guys, the 5th, 6th round. That's where he was going. And it doesn't get much better than trading him away after coming off of a game in which he had scored a touchdown. Now, the best time to trade him is undoubtedly right now. And while there will be people who do think that Marquise Goodwin is a superior talent and can keep up the production, just remember last season, Goodwin was only able to average 5 targets and 56 yards per game without Jimmy Garoppolo, and he only reached the end zone once. So that's virtually unstartable at this point, so it would be wise to unload him for any value that you can get. The next player on this list is Marvin Jones, and he's the last buy low wide receiver. I've wanted to put him on this list for the past 2 weeks, but after scoring in 2 consecutive weeks, it is time to finally ship him off to the highest bidder. It's been made extremely clear that Golladay and Tate are going to make up most of the production for this team in the receiving game, or at least that's what they're going to do from a consistency standpoint, because Marvin Jones is still there. He's still a superior deep threat, but at this point he's nothing more than a boom bust flex player, and the boom upside that he has had in the previous 2 seasons, those 200-yard multi-touchdown games, I wouldn't be expecting many of those this season, if at all. Now, don't get me wrong, he definitely has that 2-touchdown game type of upside just based off the talent alone, but the way that Golladay has completely taken over makes the likelihood of him hitting that mark as often as he did in the previous seasons just an unlikely outcome. Now, what I'm saying is, don't just trade away Jones for some magic beans. He still has both the name value and the production to match a solid trade. The targets are there. He's actually on pace to have even more targets than he had last season, so it's not like you are just unloading a bus. But when it comes to trading, we don't always want to ship off our garbage. We want to offer players that still hold value, and if we expect to get anything of value in return, we have to ship off players that have value, and Marvin Jones is the perfect combination of name value and skill to get the job done in a trade. Alright guys, that's it for the sell high candidates. We're going to move on to the buy lows, but before we do, don't forget about the DraftKings deal. I misspoke yesterday when it came to this deal because I said you could get $5 of DraftKings bucks for your first time $5 deposit. Well, the deal's actually better than I thought, and you guys should really jump on this while you still have the opportunity. For new DraftKings users who deposit their first $5, you get 10 DraftKings dollars. That's right, it's like a 200% deposit bonus. You guys should really jump on this offer while it still applies. We can no longer offer the last deal where you could get complete access to our site for a $10 deposit, but if you're willing to create a new DraftKings account and join us on there, deposit $5, you'll get $10 as well on top of that, so you have $15 to play with. And Nick's going to be posting videos every Friday on how to help increase that balance. So if you're interested, make sure to check out the link in the description box below, and let's have some fun on DraftKings. But on to the buy low candidates. To start with the running backs, we have Sony Michel of the New England Patriots, and Michel was definitely underwhelming. In fact, the Patriots themselves were extremely underwhelming, but the good news is Michel is the clear starter, and with Burkhead out, it's his job to lose. The reason he is such a good buy low candidate this week is because he didn't look very good in what was his real debut game, but this Patriots offense is about to get an injection of talent and a major boost offensively with having Josh Gordon and Julian Edelman both returning soon. This is going to be one of the best passing games in the entire league, and that's going to give Michel a ton of opportunities to maximize on, and what he does best is his big playability, and he's going to have the chance to show it off. Now, don't overpay for Michel. Don't pay for him as if he's a locked and loaded RB2, because hey, he's still a Patriots running back. He could fumble his way out of a job within 1 week, and they bring up a guy on the practice squad who ends up being the actual guy to own for the next 2 weeks. That's just how the Patriots do things. And another reason not to pay up for him is because he still didn't look great. We don't want to buy on potential all the time, or at least overpay for the risk. So send out an offer, see what people are asking for, and if the price is right, take a flyer on Michel. Definitely has a ton of upside. The talent's there, the opportunity's there. He's coming off a poor performance against a bad defense, so get in in while you can. I think the next controversial player on this list is Matt Breida. I have him as a buy low candidate, and I know that sounds a little weird. It's hard to buy low on a player first who's leading the league in rushing, and second, I think most people expect Matt Breida to have a giant drop off in production because, as we know, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's out, he tore his ACL. But the way I see it is similar to what everyone did with Chris Hogan last week with the news that Gordon was acquired by the Patriots. Everyone panic sold Chris Hogan, and this week everyone is going to be panic selling all of the 49ers players, including Matt Breida, and they're not going to be asking for full price because 11 other people in your league aren't going to pay full price. So I don't think you're going to have to pay for Matt Breida. First of all, they drafted him really late in drafts, so he doesn't have a ton of value. This is the only point in the season where draft day value actually still trickles down for the first few weeks. By week 5 or 6, nobody's even going to care where people were drafted, but for right now that plays a factor. So you tie in that he's a low draft capital player who's coming off of a subpar offense that just lost their starting quarterback. Everyone's going to think he has absolutely no value right now, and I'm here to tell you that he can still retain some of that value. He will undoubtedly lose some touchdown upside, but this team will revert back to heavily relying on passing to the running back position. It was something that they did a lot before Jimmy Garoppolo was named the starter. In fact, Carlos Hyde averaged 4.5 receptions per game and 18.5 total touches per game while averaging 85 total yards. So if you were to stretch that out through an entire season, that would equate to 72 receptions for 1,360 total yards. That's some legitimate production, and remember, that was without Jimmy Garoppolo. But I won't say to get super excited though. It's still a timeshare, and Breida is going to have a lot more risk, but if you can get him off of an owner who thinks that they're selling high before an impending drop off, you may be able to squeak out some extra value in this trade. On to the wide receivers. The next buy low we have is Quincy Aiyuk of the New York Jets, and you may be able to wait a week for this player. The Jets face Jacksonville in what should be a defensive bloodbath, but up to this point, Aiyuk himself has been a breath of fresh air for this offense. He has over 25 targets and is the go-to option for Darnold in the receiving game, and that doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon. But don't get it mistaken, people are still hesitant to buy in. I see him on everybody's benches, and he's coming off of a game that was his worst statistical performance of the entire year so far. Fear not though, this Browns defense, it's extremely underrated, and I believe that if he can avoid injury, he does have wide receiver 2 type upside and should be in the wide receiver 2 conversation in PPR leagues for the rest of the season. Aiyuk is yet another guy who was taken off of waivers, so if people are able to flip a waiver guy for somebody with a lot more name value, they normally end up leaving the trade happy and feeling like they won, regardless of what the production of the player that they got off the waivers is. John Brown, for instance, he's one of the league leaders in air yards after 3 weeks, yet he's still only owned in 47% of leagues because absolutely nobody wants to buy in. Not everyone's buying into Aiyuk, and he's on a Jets team that most people think is just piss poor. So if you can target an owner like that, you can easily land Aiyuk on your roster. Now the last player we have at the wide receiver position is comment section down below, your top buy low and your top sell high. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.